As the serpent in the flames hissed, Oeni's calm demeanor began to crack. His charming smile faltered, and for the first time, the villagers saw a different side of him, the side that sent chills down their spines. His eyes darkened, and his body stiffened as the fire illuminated the truth that had been hidden beneath his human form. In the quiet village of Okewo, life was simple. Villagers tended to their farms, gathered in the market square, and celebrated communal events with joy. But all that changed the day Oeni arrived. He came out of the forest, dressed in fine clothes, with skin as smooth as silk and eyes that seemed to hold secrets of distant lands. No one knew where he came from, but he immediately captured the attention of the entire village. Oeni wasted no time in ingratiating himself with the villagers. He helped the men in their farms, offered gifts to the women, and gave children sweets they had never tasted before. Soon, he was invited to every gathering, his laughter and stories becoming a central part of village life. The elders were pleased with his generosity, but deep down, they couldn't help but feel uneasy about the man who had suddenly appeared with no past. One evening, during a village meeting, the chief, Barbarajadi, asked Oeni about his origins. Oeni only smiled, saying, "I have traveled far and wide, but now, Okewo is my home. The gods have blessed me, and I wish to bless this village in return." His answer, though vague, was enough to satisfy the curious villagers, but for some, the mystery deepened. As the days went on, Oeni's influence grew. He became the most talked about man in the village, and young women especially were drawn to his charm. However, none of them knew that beneath his charm lay a dark secret, a secret that would soon shake the village to its core. Oeni quickly became the center of attention in Okewo, but it was Oeni, the village's most beautiful maiden, who caught his eye. Oeni was known for her striking beauty, her glowing dark skin, long braided hair, and eyes that sparkled like stars on a clear night. Many men had tried to win her heart, but none had succeeded. That is, until Oeni arrived. From the moment Oeni set his eyes on Oeni, he showered her with attention. He brought her gifts, from rare beads to fine clothes, things no one in the village had ever seen before. Oeni, who had once been indifferent to the advances of men, found herself slowly falling under his spell. Oeni's voice was smooth and soothing, his words sweet like honey. Every time they met, she felt as though he could see into her soul, and the more they spoke, the more she became captivated by him. But there were rumors. Some villagers whispered of strange things happening at night. A few people claimed to have seen Oeni walking deep into the forest when the moon was high, only to return with a strange glow in his eyes. Others said they heard strange hissing sounds coming from the direction of his hut, though no one dared to confront him. Despite these whispers, the villagers adored Oeni. He had brought wealth to the village, offering help to farmers and even ensuring their crops grew faster. The prosperity made people turn a blind eye to the peculiar occurrences. As long as the village flourished, Oeni's oddities were of little concern. Oeni's parents, especially her father, Baba Fatai, were more than pleased with the attention their daughter was receiving. For them, Oeni was a godsend. He was not only wealthy but respectful and courteous, a perfect son-in-law. Baba Fatai couldn't have been more excited about the blossoming relationship, as he knew Oeni would take care of his daughter and bring even more prosperity to their family. But not everyone was convinced that Oeni's charm was natural. Mama Agba, the village seer, had seen things, dark things. She often watched Oeni from her small hut at the edge of the village, sensing a presence around him that she couldn't explain. She knew something was wrong, but with everyone in the village so smitten by him, especially Oeni, no one would listen to her. Mama Agba decided to keep her visions to herself for now, but she kept a close watch on Oeni, waiting for the moment when the darkness she felt around him would reveal itself. Chapter 3: The Warning of the Old Seer. One afternoon, as Oeni was walking back from the market with her basket full of yams, she saw Mama Agba sitting under a large baobab tree, watching her with piercing eyes. The old woman's presence unnerved her, but she had always respected Mama Agba's wisdom. As Oeni approached, Mama Agba beckoned her closer with a gnarled finger. Oeni, the old seer, began in a low, rasping voice, "Come sit with me." Reluctantly, Oeni sat beside the old woman, her heart racing. She had always heard stories of Mama Agba's predictions, how she could see things before they happened, how she had once saved the village from a deadly plague by performing a sacred ritual. But Oeni had never felt the need to consult her until now. Mama Agba stared into the distance, her wrinkled face solemn. That man, Oeni, he is not what he appears to be. Oeni's eyes widened. Mama, why do you say this? Oeni is kind and good. He has brought wealth to the village. Mama Agba shook her head slowly. Kind? Good? HMPH. His beauty, his charm, it is a mask, a trap. Darkness surrounds him, Oeni. I have seen it in my visions. His true form is not human. Oeni shivered, the old woman's words gnawing at her. What do you mean? He is a creature of the underworld, Mama Agba continued, her voice grave. A snake in human form, seeking to devour the innocent. His time here is not for love, but for destruction. You must stay away from him. Oeni recoiled, her heart pounding. No, that can't be true, Mama. Oeni loves me. He has done nothing but good for this village. You are mistaken. Mama Agba's eyes, sharp and penetrating, bore into Oeni's. You are young, child, and blinded by love. But I tell you now, if you marry him, your life and the lives of many others will be in grave danger. Oeni rose to her feet, her hands trembling. I appreciate your concern, Mama Agba, but I cannot believe this. You are wrong. The old woman sighed, her shoulders slumping. I have said what I must. The choice is yours now, but mark my words, there will come a time when you will remember this day, and you will wish you had listened. Oeni hurried away, her mind spinning. She didn't want to believe Mama Agba's warning, but a small voice inside her whispered that there was some truth to it. She shook off the feeling, reminding herself of Oeni's love and generosity. He couldn't be a monster, he just couldn't. Chapter 4, The Courtship Ceremony. Despite Mama Agba's warnings, Oeni continued her relationship with Oeni. Soon, Oeni proposed a formal courtship ceremony, a traditional rite that marked the beginning of their journey towards marriage. It was a grand event that no one in the village wanted to miss. On the day of the ceremony, the entire village gathered at Baba Fatai's compound, eager to witness the spectacle. Oeni had spared no expense, bringing gifts that dazzled everyone, fine woven cloths from distant lands, glittering beads, and golden bangles. The villagers marveled at the wealth on display, and once again, the whispers of suspicion about Oeni were drowned out by admiration. Oeni stood in the center of the compound, adorned in a beautiful, bright yellow gown, her face glowing with happiness. Oeni stood by her side, his tall, handsome figure drawing the attention of every woman present. As the village drummers played, Oeni stepped forward to present the gifts to Oeni's family. But amidst the dancing and celebration, something strange happened. A snake, small but noticeable, slithered across the path between the dancers. No one noticed, except for Mama Agba, who stood at the edge of the crowd, watching closely. Her eyes widened as she whispered a silent prayer to the gods. The snake disappeared into the bushes, and the ceremony continued uninterrupted. But Mama Agba knew this was no ordinary snake, it was a sign. Yet again, she tried to warn the villagers, but they ignored her, celebrating the union between Oeni and Oeni with fervor. As the day ended, Oeni walked Oeni back to her father's house. The night air was cool, and the village quieted after the excitement of the day. But beneath the stillness, something dark stirred, hidden from the eyes of the villagers, something only Mama Agba could see. The morning after the grand courtship ceremony, the village buzzed with excitement and gossip about Oeni's wealth and charm. However, in the quiet shadows, the first signs of trouble began to unfold. A young man named Adiwale, who had once courted Oeni before Oeni arrived, disappeared without a trace. His family was frantic, searching the entire village and surrounding forest, but no one had seen him since the previous night's celebration. At first, the villagers dismissed his disappearance as perhaps a rash decision to leave the village out of jealousy, since Oeni had chosen Oeni. However, when another young man named Kolade, also once interested in Oeni, vanished just days later, the village began to worry. Both men had been well known and respected, and their sudden absence sent ripples of fear through the hearts of their families and friends. Despite the growing unease, Oeni remained untouched by suspicion. His charm and generosity were too overwhelming. Whenever someone dared to question his influence, he would offer them gifts, smooth words, or his mesmerizing smile, and their doubts would dissolve like mist under the morning sun. The villagers convinced themselves that the disappearances were unrelated, an unfortunate coincidence. But behind closed doors, the whispers grew louder. Mothers warned their daughters to be cautious around Oeni, and the village elders, though hesitant, began to murmur their own concerns. Could it be possible that Oeni was connected to these vanishings? Yet, no one dared to accuse him openly. After all, his wealth had brought them comfort, and his presence seemed to bless their fields with abundant harvests. Still, there were those who remained skeptical, especially Adani's childhood friend, Adebayo. He had always been protective of her, and though he had never been a suitor, he felt something was wrong with Oeni. Adebayo had noticed Oeni's strange behavior on more than one occasion. The late-night walks into the forest, the sudden bursts of wealth, and now the disappearances, none of it sat right with him. One evening, Adebayo decided to follow Oeni into the forest. Armed with only a small knife and a lantern, he waited until he saw Oeni leave his hut under the cover of darkness. Quietly, he followed from a distance, his heart racing as they ventured deeper into the forest than he had ever gone before. The deeper they went, the more unnatural the forest seemed. The trees appeared to loom over him, their branches twisted like claws, and strange sounds filled the air. Just as Adebayo was about to lose his courage, he saw Oeni stop in front of a cave hidden beneath a large tree. Oeni stood motionless for a moment, and then something unimaginable happened. His body began to shift, his tall frame contorting in ways that no human body should. Adebayo watched in horror as Oeni's lower half transformed into the long, slithering body of a massive serpent. Frozen in shock, Adebayo couldn't believe his eyes. He had heard of such creatures in ancient folk tales, but to see one before him was terrifying. As Oeni disappeared into the cave, Adebayo fled back to the village, his heart pounding in his chest. He knew he had to warn Adani and the rest of the village, but he also knew no one would believe him without proof. Chapter 6: The Marriage Proposal. Despite the growing rumors and the disappearances, Oeni moved forward with his plans. He officially proposed marriage to Adani, presenting her family with gifts beyond their wildest dreams. Baba Fatai was overjoyed, overwhelmed by the sight of golden coins, rare fabrics, and livestock he had never seen before. He proudly accepted Oeni's proposal, sealing the fate of his daughter. Adani, though still troubled by the unsettling dreams of snakes, convinced herself that they were nothing more than pre-wedding nerves. She had seen no proof of Oeni's alleged darkness and refused to believe the whispers that had begun to circulate. She loved him, and she trusted him. The thought of losing him over rumors seemed unbearable. The wedding was set for the next full moon, and preparations began in earnest. The village buzzed with excitement for what was to be the grandest wedding in its history. People traveled from neighboring villages to witness the union, drawn by the tales of Oeni's wealth and generosity. Mama Agba, watching from the sidelines, was more anxious than ever. She knew the darkness surrounding Oeni was growing stronger with each passing day. Despite the warnings she had given Adani, no one would listen to her now. Oeni's grip on the village was too strong. One evening, as Mama Agba sat outside her hut, she was visited by Adebayo. His face was pale, and his voice shook as he recounted what he had seen in the forest. Mama Agba listened in silence, her face grim as the pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place. "I knew it," she whispered. "He is not of this world. He is a demon in human skin, and he will destroy this village if we do not stop him." Adebayo nodded, his hands trembling. "What can we do? No one will believe us." Mama Agba stared into the darkness, her mind racing. "There is a way, but it will not be easy. The spirits of the ancestors are our only hope. We must perform a ritual to expose his true form to the entire village. Only then will they see the monster that hides beneath his charm. But the ritual is dangerous," she continued. "It will require a sacrifice, one that not everyone will be willing to make." Adebayo, though terrified, knew that something had to be done. He couldn't allow Adani to marry a creature of darkness. Together, they began to plan, knowing that time was running out. Chapter 7: the dark dream. As the wedding day approached, Oeni's dreams grew darker and more vivid. Each night, she found herself lying in her bed, only to feel something cold and scaly brush against her legs. She would awaken in a panic, her heart racing as the images of snakes danced in her mind. In the dreams, the snake was always enormous, its body coiled tightly around her, its eyes glowing with a malevolent hunger. She tried to shake off the dreams, convincing herself that they were merely a reflection of her fears about marriage. Yet, the dreams left her feeling drained and fearful, as if something was trying to warn her of a danger she couldn't quite see. One night, the dream changed. This time, the snake was not coiling around her, but transforming into a man who looked like Oeni, but with eyes that glowed a fierce red. In the dream, he reached out to her, his fingers turning into fangs, and as he drew closer, she felt her body freeze in terror. Oeni woke up screaming, her body drenched in sweat. Her mother rushed into the room, cradling her daughter and whispering soothing words, but the fear wouldn't leave Oeni. Deep inside, she knew something was wrong, but she didn't know what to do. She wanted to tell Oeni about the dreams, but a strange fear held her back. Something inside her told her that if she spoke the words aloud, the darkness in the dreams would spill into reality. And so, she kept her fears to herself, even as they gnawed at her heart. The wedding day was drawing nearer, and with it, a sense of impending doom. With the wedding fast approaching, Adebayo and Mama Agba wasted no time. They gathered in secret to prepare for the ritual that would expose Oeni's true form. Mama Agba had called upon the spirits of their ancestors for guidance, spending days in isolation to seek their help. She knew that the ritual required specific items and a powerful invocation, and the slightest mistake could lead to disastrous consequences. In the dead of night, Adebayo snuck into the sacred grove where the ritual would take place. The air was thick with the scent of herbs and the faint glow of fireflies. Mama Agba was already there, sitting by a fire with a collection of ancient items, a snake's skin, an eagle's feather, a calabash filled with sacred water, and the carved staff of her ancestors. The air around them was heavy with tension, as if the spirits themselves were watching. "Mama, are you sure we can do this?" Adebayo asked, his voice barely a whisper. Mama Agba's eyes, deep with wisdom, looked at him steadily. "We have no choice. If we do not act, the village will be consumed by the darkness Oeni brings. He is not here for love, he is here to feed, to devour what is pure." The plan was simple but risky. During the wedding feast, Mama Agba would perform the ritual in front of the entire village. The ancestors' power, channeled through her, would reveal Oeni's true form. But the ritual would also weaken her, perhaps fatally, because it demanded a great sacrifice of her own life force. As Mama Agba began preparing the ritual items, she whispered a prayer under her breath, her old hands trembling slightly. "Spirits of our ancestors, guide us. Do not let this evil destroy our people." Adebayo watched in silence, his heart pounding. He knew they were going against something ancient and powerful, but he trusted Mama Agba's wisdom. Together, they finalized their plan. The ritual would be their only chance to save Oeni and the village from Oeni's dark grasp. Chapter 9: The Wedding Day. The day of the wedding finally arrived, and Okewo was transformed into a vibrant, celebratory spectacle. Colorful decorations adorned every corner of the village, and the smell of rich food wafted through the air. People from neighboring villages had come to witness what was being hailed as the grandest wedding in the region. Laughter, music, and the sounds of drums filled the air as the villagers gathered to celebrate the union of Oeni and Oeni. Oeni, dressed in a flowing white garment embroidered with gold, looked radiant but troubled. The dreams had not stopped, and as she stood in front of the mirror, her hands trembled. Her mother fussed around her, adjusting the veil and offering words of comfort, but the weight of something unknown pressed heavily on Oeni's heart. Meanwhile, Oeni appeared as charming and calm as ever. He moved through the crowd with ease, his dazzling smile disarming anyone who looked at him too long. The villagers adored him, speaking in hushed tones about how lucky Oeni was to marry such a wealthy, handsome man. But beneath the surface of the festivities, a darker force lurked. Mama Agba arrived at the wedding quietly, unnoticed by most. She stood in the back, her eyes scanning the crowd, looking for signs of danger. Adebayo was by her side, tense and ready. The time for the ritual was near, and they could only hope that the spirits would answer their call. As the sun set and the wedding feast began, Mama Agba made her way to the center of the village square. The villagers, still in the midst of their celebration, paid little attention as she stood before the fire, holding the sacred items in her hands. But Adebayo knew that once the ritual began, everyone would see the truth, whether they were ready for it or not.